Hello and a warm welcome to Talking Europe. Turning against traditional parties, voters are increasingly opting for the candidates and parties they perceive as outsiders. Fear of foreigners or doubts about economic management have led to a rise in extremist populist parties. Present on both sides of the centre, they claim to speak for the people, the real people. From Donald Trump in the United States to UKIP in the UK, and there could be more to come as the Netherlands, France, Germany all gear up for general elections next year. And of course, there's the polls this weekend in Italy and Austria, which, though different in form, asked a common question at the end of it: do Europeans trust the political status quo? So what is the reason behind the rise of these parties? Will they survive? And what impact are they groups already having? With us in studio, we're joined by French MEP Constance Le Gris of the French Republicans Party. Besides you, we have Italian MEP Fabio Massimo Castaldo with the Five-Star Movement. On the opposite side of the table, we have Ms. Evelyn Regner, Austrian MEP with the Social and Democrats. Thanks all for being with us. Ms. Regner, maybe I'll start with your good self. When we look at the presidential elections in Austria, we had a candidate previously with the Green Party, an independent, and opposite him, a far-right candidate. Where were the mainstream parties?
I mean, we just have the challenge of digitalization, globalization. I mean, there are so many open questions concerning the future, though the Austrian general economic situation is quite okay. So somehow it's more about emotions, feelings and fears of the future. It's not so much about facts. It's just about this, what you are maybe afraid of. And somehow this is the big question mark also for this election.
Fear, we'll look at in a minute, definitely seems to be playing a part in the rise of extremist populist parties. Also this disenfranchisement, this feeling of really being ignored by mainstream parties. Was the election of Donald Trump in some ways a wake-up call for parties here in Europe? Are they addressing the issue?
Probably we could say yes, but in any case, I think that the most important fact is that this campaign was won by Donald Trump, but the UPNL was completely lost by Hillary Clinton, that completely forget the middle class in the United States, the working class. She was not able really to provide a clear message. I think that a candidate like Sanders could have been better in this case to represent an alternative more close to the social politics that could tackle the kind of crisis that is also going on in the United States. For what it concerns Europe, I think that in the different countries there are very different situations and also completely different answers. In Italy, the Five Stars movement was UPNL, a clear answer to the clientelism and the corruption that are unfortunately characteristic of most of the mainstream parties.
That does seem to be a large issue now, is rather than having a past experience seen as a positive thing, it's seen as a negative. We saw it very recently in France with the primaries for the Republican Party. Former President Nicolas Sarkozy ousted in those elections because he has been president before more than anything else, or not, Ms. Le Gris?
Yes, but the voters chose his former Prime Minister, François Fillon, so the answer is not
still
as
seen as
simple.
less responsible.
It's just, I think, that the French voters who decided to vote in these primaries wanted to try another style, another kind of leadership, maybe another kind of governments, but they also chose, and that's important vis-à-vis our debate today, they chose somebody who's giving clear messages, who's got strong positions on very important topics for the voters, French, European voters, whatever, strong positions on some very important issues and the issues that are important for the people. How can we deal with the economic and social crisis? What about the identity crisis? And
which in France
all these
is becoming a very big
answers
issue.
have to be more considered by the traditional, entre guillemets, traditional political forces, because people thought we didn't deliver enough.
I haven't heard very strongly from parties making the case for cultural diversity from non-Europeans entering our bloc. Ms. Castaldo, do you think that that's maybe where we're failing the voters? People are playing into the emotion, the fear factor, and that's how they're getting elected.
First of all, we do not have a clear European strong strategy to tackle unemployment. This is, in my opinion,
this is absolutely true.
The most crucial aspect, and that's why people feel more and more disappointed by the European Union. It's also fueling some rhetorics by some governments in this moment that are always trying to show themselves like the defenders now of the anti-austerity front against the European Commission, against Europe. I think that in this moment the alternative should be, on the contrary, a clear, strong public investment plan to tackle this unemployment, more Keynesian, let's say, position. But until Europe will not point and put at the center of this and the heart of his action, I think that this feeling of disappointment, this feeling also of
lack
fear,
of solidarity as well across the EU, which is something that's come out very strongly in Italy, for example. I believe the Lega Nord, that's where they've seen their support base, if you like, increase because, you know, they're angry at Brussels for not doing more to help Italy, who's taking so many of those migrants arriving onto their shores, arriving into the EU. We've seen a similar pattern in Germany. The far-right extremist populist party there also taking seats in local government for the first time since 1945. Let's take a quick look.
At AfD HQ, the results confirm what the polls predicted. With 14.2% of the vote in Berlin elections, the populist Alternative for Germany party now sits in 10 out of 16 regional parliaments. This region's symbolic, until now having resisted populist trends.
Normally, Berlin's vote goes to the left or the Greens. Within this context, getting up to this score from 0 is quite remarkable.
Another triumph for the far-right party, 2 weeks after it reached a new record, gaining over 20% of the vote in the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern regional election and helping to hand Angela Merkel's Christian Democrat Party an embarrassing defeat there. In just 3 years since its creation, the AfD party has succeeded in becoming a political force to be reckoned with. To do this, its leader Frauke Petry has drawn in followers with an anti-Islam and anti-migrant line, attracting those unhappy with Merkel's policies on migration.
The
AfD was born out of another topic entirely, the Eurozone crisis, and how Germany should behave towards Greece. So it was people criticizing Schäuble and Merkel, saying they were too soft on these southern European countries. But lately, what's brought the party such electoral success is the matter of refugees. It's given them wide appeal.
The AfD now has its sights firmly set on the 2017 legislative elections, with recent polls suggesting it's on track to enter the Bundestag for the first time.
So, Ms. Le Gris, how much do you think this lack of solidarity is a cause of the rise of these extremist, anti-EU, for a lot of them, populist parties, or how much is it the effect? Because even if they're not in power, a lot of them, they're very powerful. We've seen in terms of migration, in terms of trade, governments now shying away from a lot of decisions.
Yes, I think that the major problem is not the lack of solidarity, but the lack of efficiency and the lack of protection. You know, people consider that their political forces, the political leaders, should deliver, should be efficient, and
why is that
should
failing?
protect them. Because maybe not all the political forces, the traditional political forces, really understood and did the job to change maybe proposal, to change the vision they had vis-à-vis the world, the current situation, the total globalization of situation.
And on a European level, I mean, could we see the EU reacting in order to counterweight, if you like, the rise of these populists? I'm thinking like France and Italy, in fact, have demanded more leniency when it comes to their budget deficit. I believe Matteo Renzi at one point said, well, he'd much prefer a France with much higher debt rather than a France with the far-right National Front candidate Marine Le Pen as president. Do you think Brussels will react to that?
In this moment, not yet, because I think that everything will be blocked until the German elections, unfortunately, because Angela Merkel would like to win, of course, this her fourth mandate, and so she's a bit scared more than the socialists and more than the possible opponents. She's really scared of the right wing of her party, and also of Alternative for Deutschland. So she would like to show herself himself like the real great defender of the austerity dogma and the position we have seen until now. So I will not expect big changement before those elections, but I'm pretty sure that the risk, if they will not change this attitude, and if they will not accept to have a big investment plan, not like the Juncker plan, but the real one that could help the small, medium enterprise business company that would not help at all, and they are, for example, in Italy, the core of our economy. I'm expecting the possible risk of even of a collapse of the European Union, unfortunately, and because we came here to reform and to push a new model, a new wave of integration. But what we have seen until now, it's a kind of blind reaction from the.
So what I see right now is sort of we're really in a difficult situation because we have this old system of liberalization where you say everything is something is free market, and then what happens? Explosion of unemployment. That's not good. But on the other side, and this is something that is crucial and the reason, but also the effect of the whole right-wing movement, nationalism. And this is something absolutely bad for all of us in our countries. When we see, we have so many movements, it's from Cinque Stelle, I see you sometimes as well there as the far right. So many in the anti-EU movements, because when you say we do the whole thing in our home countries, what do you do then when the problems are so huge?
Do you think, Mr. Regnier, though, that the EU will react to that? Because, as you say, liberalisation and EU value, is it not? And yet, very much not popular. We've seen reforms in France, tiny reforms that really met with a lot of angst and rejection there. Could we see the EU allowing more protectionist national governments take control?
The question is not the EU, Brussels, what's happening in the Brussels bubble. Does the Brussels bubble have to interfere into national elections or not? The problem is, what do we do all together to rebuild a more efficient and more transparent and more capable and more protective European Union? Of course, the voters all over Europe, I'm sure, want to reshape, reform, and are willing to continue to build something, but something which gives protection, results, efficiency, which take into account the necessity of defending Europeans' interests in the world.
But unfortunately, this is not going to happen until the majority of mainstream parties will continue to consider that the rise of those parties, extreme right parties, UKIP and all, it's the cause of the problem, because it's just the consequence. And they are not focusing.
But what we have to do right now is somehow really to talk all together, because somehow when in Italy there is big criticism, there should be more solidarity with those countries with economic difficulties. At the same time, Germans and Austrians say we have so many poor people too. Why should we bring the money to Italy? Then you see the Eastern European countries who say we still have to catch up because of communism, and we say no, please, you also have to respect the same wage, the same place. So somehow what we all together have to do simply is to talk more and to come to those joint solutions, and not only to say, look at us poor Italians, or look at us poor French or poor Austrians,
may
but
I
really
ask
to approach.
one question? We talk, in fact. For example, we supported and we voted for the Juncker plan to redistribute the migrants. But unfortunately, why it didn't work for Italy, for Five Stars Movement? No, it didn't work because Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, and...
total lack of solidarity in the EU.
Which means a lack of solidarity.
It showed a clear lack of solidarity.
But Ms. Regnier, can I take you up? Because one thing you're saying, we should talk together, and I do believe Austrian Chancellor Christian Kern, it looked like he was softening his stance in a way towards the Freedom Party, because he said, well, they also want to move the country forward. He seems like he wants to talk with them. Is it a better idea to include these often anti-EU extremist parties and put them as part of the system?
I just tell you, it's very, very difficult to talk to somebody who is really not respecting at all major principles of democracy. So we have really within this FPÖ people who are smiling, who are nice, who look like having feet to earth, but in reality, when you look a little bit deeper, they're anti-democratic. But it is always important, and that's what we learned from our experience, not to completely exclude those
of view.
people who had been voted, had been elected, when the people are saying in the streets, I vote for them, you have to talk to them. But
course,
one thing is
and to
important, one thing
listen
is
to them.
important, not to leave the path of our values. Democracy, that's a value where we don't stop. We always have to
Democracy, of
defend it
course.
and to move to all those far right-wing, far populist or whatever and say, that's
overall,
our ground.
Talking is the way
Yes.
forward.
May I say that
Last
also
word,
to
Mr.
defend this value of democracy, people should feel more involved in the process. That's why we are fighting in Italy to strengthen the possible ways like direct democracy, e-democracy. People would like to express their will and their position, not just once per 4 years or per 5 years, but would like to give input. And that's what, for example, we do with our
like
informatics system, asking opinions on the most important issues we're discussing in the parliament. This could also be a way.
So you can always
We are
use
in a new
new,
century, definitely.
yes.
We're in a new century. All political forces should involve, should
Need to
improve. Yes,
Okay.
their offer. Absolutely,
Well, I'm afraid
definitely.
it's there. We're going to have to wrap it up for this half of the show. Thanks indeed to my guests. Thanks also to you at home for having watched. Do join us, though, after the news when we'll be speaking to a former Prime Minister of Ukraine, Mr. Arseniy Yatsenuk. See you then.